In this video, we're going to find the slope of a line algebraically and graphically, and then be able to classify it by type. Now, depending on how you've been exposed to slope in the past, there's a number of ways you could have seen slope. So we talked about slope as the vertical change over the horizontal change. This can also be worded as your change in y. So how did you change with your y value in your points? And how did you change in your x value in your points? So change in y is another way of saying vertical change. Change in x is another way of saying horizontal change. And the most popular way that you think about slope is rise over run. And here, rise means you're going up or down. So rise is a fancy way of saying vertical change, and run is a way of saying horizontal change. So any of these, if you've heard them before, they're all talking about the exact same thing. Now, this piece down here is called the slope equation. And you'll notice that it has a variable m. M is a common variable to represent slope. So if you see m, you should be thinking m is a common way of representing slope. Now, this equation right here is what we can use if we have 2 points and we need to find the slope algebraically between 2 points. So that's what we're going to work on next. So what we're going to do first is we're going to pick 2 points on our graph, and I'm going to show you how you can utilize the slope equation to find the slope between those 2 points. So I'm just going to pick 2 points. I'm going to pick this point right here. That's going to be point A. And that point is at the point x is -3, y is 0. And then from here, I'm going to pick this second point up here. I'm going to call that point B. And that's the point x is 3, y is 4. So we're going to utilize the slope equation here, and we're going to actually calculate our slope algebraically using the slope equation. So remember, slope, the letter for slope is m, so we'll write m is equal to, and then we need to talk about what this y2, y1, x2, x1 actually represent. So when we're finding the slope of a line, we need to denote one point as point 1 and one point as point 2. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to denote point A as point 1 and point B as point 2. And then from here, the y2, y1, x2, x1 represent specific parts of that point. So in point 1, we're going to label the x-coordinate of point 1, x1, and the y-coordinate of point 1, y1. So that's what that stands for, x of point 1, y of point 1. And then we're going to go to point 2, and we're going to label it x of point 2 and y of point 2. So when you see those in this slope equation over here, that's what they really represent. This is y of point 2 minus y of point 1. X of point 2 minus x of point 1. So now we're going to actually substitute those values in. So let's start with y2, and if I look over at the points that I've labeled, I see that y2 is 4. So I'm going to write 4 minus y1, if I look at y of point 1, is 0. Then I look at x2, and I see that x2 is 3. So I have 3 minus x1 I see is a -3, so I'm going to put in a -3. And then what I need to do from here is I need to simplify the numerator and simplify the denominator. So I can see that 4 minus 0 is simply 4. And then I can also see that I have in the denominator, I have a keep, change, so that really becomes 3 plus 3, so my denominator becomes 6. And then from here, I note that both of these are divisible by 2, so this fraction would simplify to be 2/3. So when we see this big slope equation up here, that's all we do. We have 2 points. We need to have 2 points to find the slope of a line. We label x of point 1, y of point 1, x of point 2, y of point 2, and that will essentially, if we plug those points into the slope equation, help us find our slope, which is our rise over run, change in y over change in x, or vertical change over horizontal change. So what we're going to do on this slide is we're going to calculate the slope of each of these 4 lines algebraically using this slope equation up here. So to start, we're going to start with number 1 over here in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to start by labeling my points as x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm just going to pick this as x1, y1, so that's point 1, x2, and y2, that is point 2. So my slope m is equal to y2, which is 1, minus y1, which is 5, divided by x2, which is 3, minus x1, which is a negative 3. So if I simplify this, 1 minus 5 is a negative 4. Then I use keep, change in my denominator, and I get 3 plus 3 is 6. Then if I simplify this fraction, I find that my slope of this line is a negative 2/3. Then if I move on to the second example, what I see here is I have 2 points, so I'm going to label them x1, y1, and x2, y2. And then I go to calculate my slope, and I take y2, which is negative 4, minus y1, which is 0, all divided by x2, which is negative 2, minus x1, which is 0. So now I've substituted in my values. My numerator becomes negative 4 over negative 2. I notice that I have a negative over a negative, which is a positive. And then I know that both of these are divisible by 2, so I can simplify this to be a positive 2 over 1, or 2. Then if I look down at example 3. So in example 3, what I see is I have 2 points. I'm going to label them x1, y1, x2, y2. So then from here I'm going to go and I'm going to calculate my slope using that slope equation. So it's y2, which is 4, minus y1, which is 4, divided by x2, which is 3, minus x1, which is a negative 1. So my numerator becomes 0. My denominator, we use keep, change to get 4. And then I know that 0 divided by 4 is actually 0. Then from here, in my last example, I have x1, y1, x2, y2. And then I'm going to calculate my slope accordingly. So I take y2, which is negative 1, minus y1, which is 4, x2, which is negative 4, minus x1, which is also a negative 4. So notice I have another negative negative. Then I'm going to simplify this so the top becomes negative 5 divided by my denominator, which if I use keep, change, negative 4 plus 4 is 0. And what I should know at this point is that we can't have 0 in the denominator. 0 in the numerator is okay. That's going to result in 0. But 0 in the denominator, if you do negative 5 divided by 0 on your calculator, you're actually going to get an error. So here we're simply going to take the 2 points that they've given us, calculate the slope, and then classify it by type. Remember, our 4 types are the positive slope, negative slope, 0, and undefined. And then the other thing to remember is our slope equation is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's start by calculating the slope of that first set of points. I'm going to label them x1, y1, x2, y2. And then I'm going to go to my equation. So my equation is y2, which is negative 1, minus y1, which is 5, all divided by x2, which is 6, minus x1, which is 3. So here, if I simplify this further, I end up with negative 6 over a positive 3. I know that both of those are divisible by 3. So this simplifies to be a negative 2 over 1, or simply equal to a negative 2. So m, you could write negative 2 over 1 or negative 2. Either is fine. Then from here we need to classify it by type. And because this is a negative number, I know that this is a negative type of slope. Then from here, if I move on to number 2, again I start off the same way, x1, y1, x2, y2. So then from here we're going to take our slope equation and substitute in the values. So y2 is 4 minus y1, which is 4, divided by x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is negative 2. So we end up with 0 over, keep, change, we have 6. 0 in the numerator is okay. 0 divided by 6 is simply 0. So because I have this slope of 0 over 6, which then equals 0, I know that I have a type 0 slope. And finally, last two problems. So we're going to start off, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. Remember our slope equation is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So here we substitute in the values, so we have y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So here we have 1 minus 5, which is negative 4, over 3 minus 3, which is 0. I know that 0 in the denominator is a problem. That's something that doesn't work, and it's going to, as a result in an error. So my slope, you can write negative 4 over 0, but you should also know that the 0 in the denominator causes that to result in an error. Then from here, what we need to do is we need to classify it by type. Because we have this error occurring, our type is undefined. And finally, the last problem, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. We calculate our slope, so we have y2, which is 6, minus y1, which is 3, divided by x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is negative 2. 6 minus 3 is 3. And then the denominator we use keep, change to get 6. So we end up simplifying that by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 3 to get 1/2. So my slope here is a positive 1/2. Because our slope is a positive number, our type is a positive type slope.